With the Etsy policy updates in July 2024, it is now much more clear what we are allowed to do and not do with our listing images. So in this video, we're going to talk through some important details to pay attention to when it comes to your mockups for print-on-demand listings, especially if you are selling personalized listings. So let's get into it. All right, if you didn't see my video where I covered all of the July 2024 Etsy policy updates, definitely check that video out. It is worth reviewing all of the updates that are relevant for print-on-demand sellers. So I will link to that video in the corner of this video in the top right and also down in the description. Now let's focus in on the listing image requirements here. We got some great clarifications here in the Etsy policies around listing images when we work with production partners or if we sell personalized designs. I will link to this page in the description of the video as well, so you can go check it out for yourself. We're going to focus in on the two sections here at the bottom of the page, photos of items made with production partners and photos of personalized items. So first, the description here that applies to the majority of what we sell as print-on-demand sellers are photos of items made with production partners. So there are a couple of key takeaways here. The first one is use a real photo of the physical end product. And then the most important part for us as print-on-demand sellers is the next sentence. If you create an original design that a production partner prints onto a base item like a t-shirt or mug, you may use a stock photo mockup to illustrate the end product buyers will receive. So that sentence right there is calling out print-on-demand items. It's even mentioning t-shirts and mugs specifically as examples where we can use a mockup to illustrate the end product buyers will receive. However, we also have to take that in conjunction with using a real photo of the physical end product. So what Etsy cares about here is making sure that the mockup photos we use are an accurate depiction of the product the customer is going to receive. Now, there are three ways you can get an exact product match for that product that your print provider is going to be using. One is to order a sample and take pictures yourself. That's still a viable option. You can certainly do that. There's nothing wrong with doing that. However, it does get pretty expensive if you have hundreds of listings in your shop. So the two other ways that are a little more cost-effective are to use mockups that actually show the product that you're going to be using. So one of those ways is to use the default mockups provided by your print-on-demand platform because they will be of an accurate product. So for example, on Printify, we're using a Bella Canvas 3001 t-shirt here for this design. All we would do is when we go to the preview view, we are going to select, which mockups that we want to use, and we can browse through all of the available ones. Now, Printify has gotten much better in the last, I would say, year or so with expanding the number of mockups that are available and also providing more that look a little bit better than your typical mockup. Here's a lay flat one with a background added. I uploaded this background. You can do that in the bottom right corner. And when you scroll down on the preview view, note you have to be on the preview view. You cannot do this from the edit page. And it's also not available for every single product in the Printify catalog yet. But your most common items like your Bella Canvas and Gildan t-shirts, you should see this mockup background section where you can upload your own background to use for these mockups. So I've uploaded this wood background with my shop logo for the lay flat mockups. You can select that for any ones that you want to use. Here's an example of one I might want to use for my shop, but let's go ahead and add my background to it. There we go. Now this is a pretty reasonable mockup actually to go ahead and use in my listings if I want to keep things simple and straightforward, because these will publish straight from Printify with my listing. Where it gets a little bit interesting still are the human ones where we have somebody wearing the item. I've added a background to these as well, and it's still, it's not super convincing. It's pretty obviously a mockup. So these are still, not the best that you can get, but if you want to be certain it's an accurate representation of the product, this is one way to do it. You can also guarantee that you're getting an accurate representation of the physical product by buying mockups to use that absolutely match the product. So for example, I just searched on Etsy Bella Canvas 3001 mockup. Here's a sample of one that was in the search results. It is a Bella Canvas 3001 t-shirt. So I could use this mockup to create mockups for my listings, and it would be an accurate representation of the t-shirt that I'm using. So this is still a viable and acceptable way to create your mockups. You can, buy a couple and reuse them and just use something like Canva or Photoshop to add your design onto the base image that you have. So those are the 3 ways to get a mock-up that definitely 100% will match your final product when it comes to apparel. Now, thankfully, when it comes to things like mugs, it's a little bit simpler. All you really need to do is make sure that your mock-up that you're using doesn't have any unique or different features from the mug that your print provider is using. The same thing goes for products like posters. Generally speaking, as long as you're showing an accurate representation of the size, nobody can tell what type of paper a poster is from a mock-up. You definitely want to make sure that you are not using a mock-up that has a very glossy appearance if you're selling a matte poster. But beyond that, you don't have to be too picky about your poster mock-ups. You can use ones that are not provided by your print-on-demand platform. Just keep an eye out for things like frames. You don't want to show a framed poster if you're not selling poster with frames, unless you add some text to your mockup that says something like frame not included. Now, when it comes to all-over print items, they are more of a specialty item. Generally, these are going to be printed first on blank fabric and then cut and sewn to size for each order. And it's a little bit trickier to get mockups that are going to exactly match the finished product. So for a specialty product, including all over print, I personally usually just use the built-in default mockups with my print-on-demand platform. I don't sell a ton of all over print clothing, but if you do, just be careful if you're using any external sources of mockups that you get one that will match as closely as possible to the final product. Now, we haven't talked about Placeit yet, but Placeit does have some all-over print mockups that you can use. However, they're a little bit limited. Usually, we're talking about uploading a single image file here, and they just stretch it out over the entire product. So I wouldn't necessarily rely on sources like Placeit for all-over print mockups. You can certainly take a look at their catalog. However, for some other products like tote bags, I can happily say I have used Placeit's mockups several times, and they do look natural. You're able to use them, and they blend right in with the existing mockups. So I do still recommend Placeit. And while we're here, let's take a look at the other method. Remember, I mentioned there were 2 methods you could use to meet the requirement. One is to use a mockup of a product that is definitely the final product that you're going to be selling. The other method is to use a mock-up of a product that is a close enough match that no one could tell the difference. So that's the category for apparel anyway, where we are talking about sources like Placeit or using things like the mockups that are available from Kittl. If you use Kittl, they have a built-in mockup generator tool. Vexels has a mockup generator tool. There are multiple sources of this type of mockup. This is what we're talking about. We're talking about finding mockups that are a close enough match to your product that you can definitely use them, but you don't necessarily know for sure that the mockup is your specific brand of apparel that you're going to be selling. So let's just consider an example here. Let's come back to this one just as a reference point. This is a Bella Canvas 3001 unisex t-shirt, and let's pretend that is what we are selling. We're not selling women's sizes. We're not selling youth sizes. This is just the unisex Bella Canvas 3001. Let's take a look at whether we could use some mockups from Placeit or the built-in mockup generator from Kittl. So what do you think? Do you think I could use this mockup in a listing for a Bella Canvas 3001 unisex t-shirt? That's correct. We could use this mockup on our Bella Canvas 3001. This is a unisex cut looking t-shirt. The sleeves are rolled up. It's just the way this person is wearing it. But in general, the sleeve length looks like it would be correct. It's not overly fitted. It's not overly baggy. And that's exactly what Bella Canvas 3001 t-shirts are meant to be. And so this would be a safe mockup to use for a Bella Canvas 3001 listing. Now, what do you think of this mockup? Could I use this in my listing for my Bella Canvas 3001? Remember, I said I'm only selling the unisex shirt. I'm not selling anything else. If you said no, we could not use this mockup, you are correct. What you want to do is pay attention to the details here. If we zoom in on the sleeves, this is clearly not a unisex t-shirt, okay? Usually unisex t-shirts, the sleeves will look longer and baggier than this. These are clearly women's cut sleeves. Women's cut sleeves usually have a shorter length and are a little bit less baggy looking. So this clearly to me looks like a women's cut t-shirt. I would not use this in a listing for a Bella Canvas 3001 t-shirt unless I also sold the women's cut version in the same listing. Let's do that quiz again using Kittle's mockup generator. If I was selling Bella Canvas 3001 unisex t-shirts, could I use this mockup? If you said yes, you are correct. If you notice the sleeves on this one, they look like they're the appropriate length. They look a little bit on the baggier side, and that is how I would expect a unisex t-shirt to fit. So this looks like an accurate depiction, so I would be okay with using this one. Now let's go back to this one. What do you think? Is this one a yes or a no? If you said no, then you would be correct again, because again, it's all in the sleeves. To me, this one looks much more like a women's cut t-shirt, because if you look at the distance between the seam on the shoulder to the end of the sleeve, this is a significantly shorter sleeve than what the unisex t-shirt would actually be. All right, just for fun, let's do a quick one for mugs. This is a default mockup from Printify. I've uploaded and added this background, and but let's say you were going to look for an outside mockup from somewhere else to throw into your listings. This is what the mug looks like. Now, with mugs, one of the things you want to pay attention to if you're looking for outside mockups, besides the shape and the color of the mug, is the shape of the handle. This is called a C handle because it looks like a C. So if we take a look at this one from Kittle, what would you say? Would you say that we can use this mockup in a listing when our default mockup looks like this? If you said no, I would agree with you. Now, I know I said mugs are a little bit easier because they're more generic in terms of the product, but I wanted to show you an example of what I wouldn't use. So if you look at two things, the shape of the mug itself, look towards the bottom. Underneath the handle, we have a slight taper here. The product that we're going to be selling doesn't have that taper underneath the handle. It's a pretty much straight up and down mug on either side, whereas this mock-up clearly makes this mug look like a slightly different shape. And then let's also look at the handle. We have a C handle here, but it's a little bit of a different shape. This is a much more rounded handle compared to this one, which is more elongated. So if we look at those two, this mug is not really an accurate representation of the mug that I'm selling, so I wouldn't use this mock-up. Before we wrap this video up, we need to talk about personalized items because there is a special clause here in the Etsy policies that only applies to personalized items. So let's take a look at that section here. There's a special call out to the first image in the listing. So let's take a look at that sentence. For personalized items, your first image must feature a finished, customized item similar to what buyers will receive. Now, in the examples here, they include monogrammed accessories or t-shirts featuring a buyer's custom text. So that falls right into print on demand, right? T-shirts featuring the customer's text. Now, there's another important statement here. They were very explicit to say it is prohibited to use a photo of the blank product or a mock-up with placeholder text as the main image. And the example is your text here. It goes on to say computer-generated mockups may be used in additional listing images to showcase customization options. Just make sure your first image is the real deal. So we're going to be able to go ahead and use a mockup. However, it cannot have your text here or generic placeholder text. You can still use those images, but not as the first image. So for example, here is just a sample of a design in Kittle that I worked on in a previous video where it's a family ski trip where you can customize the year, the family name, and the city name. I could not use the design like this in my primary listing image. In the main thumbnail, I've got to actually populate a family name and a city name here to use in my primary mock-up image. Now this is just a variation of the same design, but this mock-up would be acceptable to use as my primary thumbnail because if you see the design has Smith Family Jackson Hole 2022. So it's a finished design. This is not placeholder generic text. So that is the special call out there for personalized products that you want to make sure that you are actually complying with. And because this language is so strong here, to me, this is pretty strong and explicit language that they're saying it is prohibited. If you have existing listings where you know you did this, a mock-up that says your text here as the main image, I would personally recommend going back and changing those. I would swap the main image with another one in the listing only because they were very explicit with this language. It's not a gray area. They definitely don't want you doing that. So I would recommend changing any of your existing listings if you know that you did this in the past. All right, so that'll do it for this video. Hopefully that was helpful for you. Let me know if you still have any questions about mockup images following these policy updates. Don't forget to subscribe to the POD Insights channel. If you have already, thank you so much. I appreciate your support. Thanks, everybody. See you next time.